Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Manich. I'm the director of the Copper Queen film for Arizona Opera. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I just wanted to take you through just a brief summary of how we translated this opera from stage to screen. As you may or may not know, we had to pivot during COVID from giving this as a world premiere on stage in fall of 2020 to creating a film instead. And what we did was created a real independent film of this opera. So I hope that you'll enjoy this presentation. So we can go on to into the slides here. So the first thing is I'm on slide 2, Jared. My journey. I started out by doing television production and theater in high school. I learned how to direct and edit on VHS, and we had a TV studio where we would do live to tape sometimes, and we also had local cable access channel that we produced on. So I learned a little bit about television directing very early on, and but the theater bug was the thing that piqued my interest the most at the time. And I went to Carnegie Mellon University, where I studied directing in the undergrad program in the School of Drama, and got a master's in arts management as well, and then started working as an assistant director in opera, and self-produced my first production in 2008 with my company Opera Omnia, which was really the start of my directing my own projects. I also spent a short time at the circus with Cirque du Soleil in Brazil on the Quidam tour, and that's me on the big top, picture of me on the big top during my last week in Rio de Janeiro, right before I left tour. And ever since then, I've been steadily directing opera, musical theater, also directed a world premiere play just before COVID, actually in the fall of 2019 with the Nashville Children's Theater. You can go on to slide 3, please. Then 3 years ago in 2018, I wanted to go back to my camera interests that I had back in high school. So I did a film intensive in Maine and created a short film with a track from Samson and Delilah, if you know the aria Mon Coeur. And I was already interested in experimenting with opera in film at that time, not really knowing obviously what was going to happen this year with that. And this short film did win a small award at the Great Lakes International Shorts Film Festival. And there are a couple of stills on the left of the slide that you can see. I was able to get theater in Rockland, Maine to let me shoot there, which was great. It's historic theater. So that was a really fun project. We can go on to slide 4, please. So strong women that are represented in each of those timelines. And Addison in the 2010 timeline shows up to the hotel, and we don't know why she's there. She is looking for the ghost of Julia. Julia Lowell is supposedly the ghost that actually haunts the Copper Queen Hotel in Bisbee, Arizona, where this opera takes place. And this is a fictionalized account of who Julia might have been. All we know in real life is that she was a prostitute at the Copper Queen Hotel, but we don't know much more than that. And so this opera attempts to answer that question. Great, so then we can go on to slide 5. So the next step of coming up with the design for the show was coming up with a set design. Before we really look at costumes around the same time, but set design is really essential in creating the overall approach that you're going to do to a show. And Liliana put together these collages with real photos from the Copper Queen Hotel in Bisbee. That when we move on, I'll show you how we incorporated that into the design. But that is the actual room, the Julia Lowell room at the Copper Queen Hotel. Our set designer, Liliana, was a sculpture artist before she was a set designer, and that comes through in all of her work. This is our second collaboration together, and I really love her aesthetic. You can go on to slide 6. So this was our original design for the Copper Queen stage production. As you can see, based on those collages, we were able to create a really high, we wanted to create height in the space to really fill in the theater because everything around it was going to just be black. And we really took the railings as part of our architectural vocabulary there. The way that we were going to show the two different timelines was going to be primarily through lighting changes, which is a typical approach, and also through transitions. So how people moved in and out of the space. I had plans of Julia and Addison just crossing each other in the ether as Addison is starting to see into the past of Julia's reality. So those were things that we were going to be playing with. Now, let's go on to slide 7, where you'll see how we translated what we were going to do for stage when we needed to pivot to the film set. Obviously, we made it a little smaller, a little much less tall because we were going to be shooting in the Arizona Opera Studio Theater, obviously it didn't have the height, but we didn't need the height, right? Because we were going to be now using cameras. We also needed a dynamic space with lots of possibilities for different angles for the camera. So most of these walls were removable so that we could reposition the camera to wherever we want. So if we go to slide 8, you'll see that I've done a comparison contrast. On the left side is the original theater production design. And then on the right, there are different perspectives of the room according to which wall we removed. Now, we created a hallway just outside the main door of the room that is on the bottom left there underneath the right image. And so in the stage production, we were just going to have the men on the banisters just above in sort of this abstract way, but now we could actually have a hallway because with film you can do a lot more in terms of where people are placed and where the camera's moving, and because obviously we were lip syncing to the track that we had recorded with the orchestra, that was going to be possible. Let's go to 9, please. So here we are at costumes. So the costumes mostly stayed the same from the theatrical design to the film design. However, what did change were details in trim, lining, cut. Obviously, the camera is unforgiving in that it sees a lot more details than you would see in a theater. So when you watch the film, you should really pay attention to a lot of the details that are in her corset, that are in the robe, even Addison's clothes, just very detailed, and also for the men as well. And the types of fabric that were chosen had to look even richer than they would have been in the theater, just because of the proximity of the lens. Also, you're always in the theater, you're balancing color with the lighting, but in film, it's even a more heightened process because there's so much more to think about. The way, what colors are is the camera capturing according to how you light it, how does that jacket look under that light, and then through the lens. It's a 3-layered process, really. And thanks to the film team at Manley Films, we really had a lot of help in that department from our director of photography, who's also called a cinematographer, and our first assistant director, who facilitated all of these conversations in advance. We had 8 months of pre-production for the film because the timeline kept getting pushed back. And I think that's why we were able to be so successful, because we had a proper prep period. I just want to do one little Easter egg here, a little note that Julia's robe that you see there, the red, the deep scarlet robe, it's the same color as the comforter in the 2010 timeline, which also happens to be the same color as the comforter in the actual hotel. So I just wanted to point that out. There's a line that she says, you know, I am this room. And that was something that we really wanted to link that connection there with her robe. And we can go on to slide number 10. So we had to translate the libretto into a screenplay. The writer of the libretto, John de los Santos, did that work. He created an entire screenplay based on his libretto. Now, the complication here is that if you look at the shot of the screenplay that I have there, each of those lines that say black frames, you know, exterior, the Copper Queen mine entrance, exterior, streets of Bisbee, those are each considered separate scenes in film. And those are called slug lines. And so you'll see on either side of the slug line is written 0, 0A, 0B, 0C. And those are different scene numbers. So we had to incorporate that into the schedule, which you will see there on the main schedule, along with the scene numbers from the actual opera, which are different because scenes are larger in opera. So it was a real challenge to merge these two worlds of film and theater into a cohesive schedule that everyone could understand, because the film people are expecting one thing and the theater people are expecting another. And this was, I believe it's our first day of shooting. And this was a 12-hour, we did 12-hour days to shoot the film. We shot the film in about 5 days. Total. I had a full rehearsal process of about 3 weeks to stage the singers into the action. And we also, during that time, had 10 days of orchestra recording where we pre-recorded all the music. And obviously we had to rehearse how to lip sync to that music and how to make it work with all of the action. So there were lots of layers in the process. The way that we scheduled the shoot as well was also based on what I was planning for the camera shots, which I'll talk about now. So slide 11, please. So color equals emotion. That is something that you may or may not consciously know, but color and light really affects us, our mood, how we feel about things, how we emotionally react to things. So we had to do a lot of color research for the film aspect. We shoot in RAW in film, which is a very, when you're looking at it right through the LCD screen, it doesn't look like there's much color there, but actually it's collecting millions of colors so that in post-production, you can manipulate the color a lot more and create the look that you want. So we needed to establish the mood and the emotion for each timeline separately. In the theatrical version, we knew that we were going to do warmer feelings of you know, the lighting design was going to be warmer. So, you know, for lack of a better term, more yellowy to make it feel old timey and sort of in the world of old Westerns in 1910. In 2010, we always want to do cooler colors. So blues, grays, things like that. So we wanted to achieve that in the film as well. And so this color research on the left, I mean, Deadwood was a perfect example of how we wanted 1910 to look. And then Killing Eve on the right is a TV show, and that's how we wanted 2010 to feel in general. This helped us get jump started with the team about color and what we wanted. And the editor is involved in all of these early conversations because in the end, he's the one who's guiding this color. And so it was really important that everyone was on board. So if we go to slide 12, I'll show you a bit more specificity about 1910 as well. My big inspiration were shots from The Searchers, which is a 1950s film with John Wayne there in the middle. And I just wanted to show you, this 3-shot against this other 3-shot that we did for Copper Queen that made it into the final edit. So the angle's similar, actually, and it's funny because I haven't really looked at these research photos and recently. These were all done last November of last year, so almost a year ago, and I never really looked at them after we sort of went through them. But when there's an image in your head, sometimes it just comes out that you sort of create something similar. I really wanted 1910 to feel very much like an old 40s or 50s Western in terms of style, even with the camera movement. So moving on, we have a dolly shot. This still from the Copper Queen that you're looking at now is actually the end of a long dolly shot that we do from inside the room to in the hallway. And I really wanted to hold on wider shots for longer, like in the style of older filmmaking. And then in 2010, we can move on to the next slide. I was going for a more contemporary feel, more contemporary style of filmmaking. The image on the left is from A Quiet Place. I really loved that. That was the exact angle that I wanted to achieve for scene 7 in the opera, which is Addison's big revelation of Julia's story. And even the shafts of light look similar. The color is definitely much similar. So I wanted to create angles in 2010 that were reminiscent of thrillers and horror films. My biggest influences are obviously Hitchcock and Kubrick, specifically with The Shining. We did look at a lot of reference images for that. And when you watch, even in the trailer, you see the hallway that leads to the room of Julia Lowell's room. And that was definitely an homage to Kubrick there. And also the patience of Jane Campion's work. I really love how, as a director, she patiently lets the camera just hang on to performances. And that was something that I really have always gravitated to in her work, for a long time. So that's just an example of how we sort of had to calibrate how we were going to show these 2 different time periods. We can move on to slide 14. So how did we plan all of this? So the images on the left are ground plans. They show you a bird's eye view of the set. They're technical drawing. They're very pared down technical drawing. But they help you decide as the director where the camera is going to go. And this is a camera plan for 5 different setups in 2010. A setup is when you have cameras in different places for a chunk of scenes or an entire scene. And you'll see that in the second little photo there's a ... that goes around, and that's the dolly shot that I was talking about. So I knew I wanted that third camera C, to be on a dolly so that we could go around to the side. It was all in the planning of scene 2. And we also had, so we had a 3 camera setup at all times for every scene, 1 for a wide and then other 2 cameras for medium shots and close-ups. After we were done with that general coverage, we would then do what we called specialty shots, and they were more stylized, and we would get in there more so that they could be part of the edit. And that's a really efficient way with the very short shooting schedule that we had to achieve. On the right, you'll see storyboards that I had for scene 5, which is the 2010 timeline. This is Addison and Floyd. Floyd is there at the door. He's the owner of the hotel. So this storyboard process helps my crew know the camera shots I'm looking for. And then we talk about, if they're achievable And that's how we determine when to put them in the schedule. But it also helps the editor, because now the editor knows that I wanted setup 14, which is what that 14 is on the right side there. I wanted to make sure that we cut to wide camera on the line Some Crazies. And then we go to the close-up of Addison on I Smelled Lilac. Close-ups obviously help the audience to connect to character and that something important is happening. And I Smelled Lilac is an essential part of what she is telling Floyd in this scene. And so this guides the editor. Now, I'll explain when we get to the post-production process that what you shoot and what you edit are sometimes not what you expect. Yeah, and this also actually helps you as the director know what you want. How do you want to tell the story? It's super important to do this work in advance. It was the thing that saved me in those really fast days on set. We can go to slide 15, please. So composition is obviously a huge part of storyboarding and what you want to see in the frame. So for example, this, you'll see that it's a revised shot. I came up with this shot when I was in rehearsal with the singers. And I realized that I wanted them to end up on the bed at the end of the duet, which means that I wanted to utilize our overhead camera, which we use throughout the story, but the concept was the picture above, which is that they would, we would be viewing them side by side in that way. But then when we got the camera up there, we decided to put it so that the orientation of the bodies was going with the horizontal line of the shot rather than on the vertical axis. And it makes a huge difference. I mean, I could have flipped it in post-production and it would have changed the composition because I would have had to expand it out because we shoot in 4K. And so you're able to do that kind of thing in post-production. But I felt that the final image that you see there was a much stronger way to portray this moment. Julia looks a lot more vulnerable. She looks a lot more childlike. She's trying to be protected by Theodore. This is a pivotal moment. This is the turning point of the opera where the lovers agree to go run away together. And so I wanted to make sure that this really came across, that she was desperate to get out of her situation. And for me, the choice that you see below was the stronger choice for that. So that just, a couple things that happen on set that you don't realize. They're sort of happy surprises, right? Next, 16, please. So now we have sound, which in an opera on stage, we don't do a lot of sound effects in opera because the orchestra does that for us. And we also don't need to put in sound effects like footsteps, like breathing. I mean, we just would never do that. So as you can see on the left, dated April 10th, 2020, when we thought that we were going to be able to be in the theater in September of 2020, I had 3 sound effects that were directly from the libretto. We have a hair dryer, the shower, applause, off, all that stuff. But then if you look on the right, that's page 1 of 5 full pages of what we call Foley. So Foley artists create sound effects that you put into the film at the end of the editing process. So that's footsteps, that's any kind of, if I'm grabbing something and I want to hear it, sometimes exhalations. And you have to remember that in this film process, we were not recording any sound when we shot the film, none, because it was all lip syncing the recorded orchestra. So with the recorded orchestra and the singers hearing themselves and lip syncing to their own voices. And so every sound that you hear in the film, now that it was put in there in post-production, all of it. And even the Foley artist came up with even more sounds. So I think this probably got up to 8 or 10 pages of sound effects for the film. So it's really involved, but he did a great job. We also, though, I took out some things that I didn't want to distract from the music, clothing rustling, things like that, where maybe without music, it sounds normal to hear my jacket, you know, coming off my shoulder. But if you have it with music, it actually sounds like maybe it's the orchestra turning a page or something. It sounded really, really daunting and out of place. And so we took some of those out. So there was a lot of, in our 3-week post-production process, we had to sort all of that out. If you go to the next slide, 17. So about that post-production process, this is the really fun, I mean, it's all fun, but this is one of my favorite things, is just sitting in that editing bay and day after day for 3 weeks, just going frame by frame, literally, of the film and making it better. I'm there with the editor, Zach, from Manly Films in the editing grotto where I lived for 3 weeks. And he had already done a rough cut based on my storyboards. He was also at the shoot, so he knew what was going on with the story we wanted to tell. And so he already had a version laid out for me when I arrived. And you know, the old adage is there are 3 films that you make. It's the one that you write, the one that you shoot, and the one that you edit. And it is so true. You don't believe it until you're in it. They are 3 very distinct projects in my mind. And when you get into the editing bay, you know, you really see what you shot and not what was in your head, what you actually captured. And now you shape the film into the new reality based on what you shot. And you know, a lot of the time there were so many cases in which beautiful work came out of things that we weren't expecting that happened on set, that looked nothing like a sequence that I did in my storyboard, you know, months before. And that was good. You know, it's a good thing. It means that we made it better through the collaboration of the camera people that we had, and also my DP and first AD. Something else that we do in post-production, which we started by the time I was finishing up my 3 weeks in Phoenix with the post-production, but it went on for like another month, I think, that Zach kept working on color and the sound. An example, so on the left, you'll see that that is an example of just looking at one layer of color. So Zach was able to separate for me. And this is the way that you work, you know, normally, is that you sort of extract something that you want to adjust, levels, color, and then the image next to it, which is the final product, is how we adjusted color. So it's just to show you how you can really, there's a lot of nuance that you can do so that you get the right look and feel. And you do this for each shot and each frame. It's quite involved, and really Zach is also a master of color, which is not always the case for editors. There's some editors who are great colorists, but a lot of editors don't even do color. That goes on to someone else. So Zach does both, and yeah, so that was our process. And so what Zach's job was to synthesize all of the sound into a final mix, which was done by someone else, but then Zach has to oversee that. And then that's how we get the final result of what you see in the film. So go on to the last slide, which is slide 18. And this is just a picture of me at Manly Films in the editing grotto. We were doing a little promotional film that they were wanting to work on. But I really hope that this has given you some insight into our process for how we translated this from a theater piece to a film piece. And I think that the piece itself really lends itself to the film medium, even though it was never intended to be that way. The time travel, the back and forth, we definitely kept in a theatrical feel. You know, with the colors, you'll see live lighting cues happen in shots sometimes, and that was part of the style that we wanted to achieve. Even the black surround that you know encircled the original stage set was something that we kept in. You know, that there's a black void. You know, we were under no illusion that this was not meant to be seen as a representation of a theatrical piece, but the techniques and approaches that we utilized were definitely purposefully done so that it does have the look and feel of a real independent film. So I do hope that you will stream the film when it comes out in November. You can go onto Arizona Opera's website and get more information about the Copper Queen film. There is also the copperqueenfilm.com where you can pre-order your stream, and it will be available through January of 2022. So thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to put this out into the world. Take care.
Crystal, thank you so much for that awesome presentation. As Arizona Opera mentioned in the chat, pre-sales are available now. If you want to see the full film, which we highly recommend, please do go to Arizona Opera's website and you can find that there. We have another coffee coming up, and we are celebrating that this is the final, hopefully knock wood, virtual only coffee at Kerr that we'll be doing for the 21-22 season. We do have the next one coming up. As always, RSVPs will open 2 weeks before the performance date. And we do have our next one coming up in November, and it's a good one, El Milagro del Recuerdo. That is happening on Wednesday, November 10th at 10:30 a.m. Please do RSVP to rsvp@asukerr.com. If you browse Eventbrite, the RSVPs do become visible on there 2 weeks before the program. We have a coffee sponsor, Renegade Coffee, back. We didn't have any in-person coffees, so they came back on, which we are so grateful to. Renegade Coffee, 5959 North Granite Reef. They will be serving coffee at 9:30 a.m. in person here at ASU Kerr. Program will start at 10:30 and runs about an hour, and it is free to RSVP, so please do that. Thank you so much, Arizona Opera, and everyone watching. We really appreciate you sticking with us through some insane technical failures, let's just call them, machine failure. We got set up and really appreciate you sticking around for that really awesome presentation. So thanks again to Crystal. Thank you, everyone at Arizona Opera, and all of our viewing audience. Have a great rest of your week.